For over 2 centuries, one name has echoed through the corridors of conspiracy theories, whispered in hushed tones by skeptics, analysts, and radicals alike. Not Rockefeller, not Soros, Rothschild. To some, they are a banking family with an extraordinary legacy. To others, they are the invisible hand behind every global crisis, from world wars to market crashes. The truth, as always, is far more complicated and far more interesting than fiction. This is the real story of how one family built an empire from Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto, revolutionized finance, and inadvertently became the centerpiece of global paranoia. This is the myth of the Rothschilds and the reality beneath it. The story begins in the late 1700s in the Judengasse, the Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt. In a cramped home marked by a red shield, Rothschild in German, Meyer Amschel Rothschild began his career not as a banker, but as a dealer in rare coins and antiques. Born in 1744 to a modest family of money changers, Meyer showed early signs of brilliance. His clients weren't ordinary men. They were princes, dukes, and aristocrats. Among them was Crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse, one of the wealthiest men in Europe. Through strategic networking, Meyer embedded himself into the elite circles of finance. Not by birthright, but by value. His key insight: money doesn't just serve the elite, it moves them. And if you can control the movement, you can control the game. Meyer had 5 sons, and instead of keeping them close, he deployed them like an empire builder. Each one was sent to a different European capital: Amschel to Frankfurt, headquarters; Salomon to Vienna, Nathan to London, Karl to Naples, James to Paris. They were not just emissaries. They were nodes in a financial network spanning Europe. And they communicated constantly through code, messengers, and even carrier pigeons. Decades before the internet, the Rothschilds had created a real-time global information system. But it wasn't just information, it was capital. And capital, unlike kingdoms, knew no borders. The Rothschild legend truly ignited during the Napoleonic Wars. While Europe was engulfed in bloodshed, the Rothschilds financed both sides, not because they lacked morals, but because they understood one truth: war creates debt. Debt creates opportunity. Nathan Rothschild, operating out of London, made a fortune supplying gold to Britain's army. He outmaneuvered competitors by organizing a covert operation, smuggling gold across enemy lines through France to deliver it to the Duke of Wellington. But the moment that sealed their mythical status: the Battle of Waterloo, 1815. As the story goes, Nathan received early intelligence that Napoleon had been defeated. While the rest of the market panicked, Nathan began selling stocks, causing others to follow in fear. When the market collapsed, he bought everything back at fire sale prices. Was it manipulation, genius, or both? No one knows for sure, but the Rothschild fortune exploded, and so did the myth. By the mid-1800s, the Rothschilds were more than bankers. They were kingmakers. They funded the construction of the Suez Canal. They lent to governments, not just individuals. They were involved in the creation of railroads, mining ventures, and industrial empires. Their model was unprecedented: private capital with public power. And unlike royal families, they had no army, no land, no official title. But their influence was undeniable. Governments came to them when they were broke. Kings came to them when they wanted to go to war. Even the Vatican sought their help in stabilizing its finances. But with power comes suspicion. By the late 1800s, the Rothschilds were already being portrayed as puppet masters in cartoons, pamphlets, and publications. The imagery was striking: a giant octopus labeled Rothschild with its tentacles across the globe. Jews depicted as controlling banks, newspapers, and monarchies. Slogans like "He who controls the money controls the world." Let's be clear, much of this was driven by anti-Semitism, not economic reality. The Rothschilds became a symbol, not just a family. And in a Europe where fear of the other was rising, the Jewish banker became a perfect scapegoat. But that didn't stop the conspiracy, it accelerated it. As the world entered the 1900s, the Rothschilds remained enormously wealthy, but they were no longer unrivaled. The Gilded Age in America had created new financial titans: J.P. Morgan, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and the Rothschilds, they began to fade into the background, at least publicly. But behind the scenes, their institutions still shaped the world. Rothschild banks advised monarchies in exile during World War I. They helped rebuild Europe's infrastructure after the devastation of war. They were quietly involved in central bank policy, currency stabilization, and gold reserves across Europe. Yet the more invisible they became, the more suspicious people grew. In 1913, the U.S. established the Federal Reserve. Although there's no direct Rothschild involvement in the Fed's formation, conspiracy theorists quickly linked the dots. After all, central banking was their domain, and now America had one too. By the 1920s and 30s, the Rothschilds remained central in gold trading. Their London bank was one of the four firms that set the daily gold price, a role they maintained until 2004. This gold connection only deepened the mythology. To the conspiracy theorist, gold equals control. And who better than the Rothschilds to embody that? World War II was not just a geopolitical disaster. It was a personal one for many members of the Rothschild family. Being Jewish, they were direct targets of the Nazi regime. The Vienna branch of the family was seized. Castles and estates were confiscated. Baron Louis de Rothschild was imprisoned by the Gestapo, held for ransom. Priceless art collections were looted. Yet even in destruction, the myth persisted. Some said the Rothschilds financed both the Allies and the Nazis. Others claimed they orchestrated the war itself to profit from Reconstruction. This level of paranoia ignored the obvious. They were victims. But to the committed conspiracy theorist, facts are inconvenient. Myths are much more satisfying. Post-World War II, the Rothschild name still meant power, but the structure of global finance had changed. National governments had more oversight. Multilateral institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and Bretton Woods system emerged. Family-run empires became less dominant as public corporations took center stage. The Rothschilds still owned banks, vineyards, and real estate. They still sat on boards and advised royalty. But the era of absolute dominance was over. The family's wealth became more diffuse. Multiple branches, more privacy, no central patriarch like Mayer or Nathan. And this is precisely when the myth metastasized. The internet changed everything, but not just information. It supercharged conspiracy theories. On YouTube, Reddit, Telegram, and obscure blogs, the Rothschilds were rebranded the Illuminati bankers, the puppeteers of global debt, the architects of the New World Order. Infographics started appearing showing Rothschild control of the IMF, the World Bank, every major central bank in the world, even Google, Facebook, and Hollywood studios. Zero evidence, but lots of arrows. Their actual business ventures? Small compared to BlackRock, Vanguard, or JP Morgan. But facts no longer mattered. The Rothschild name had become a brand for distrust, and like all good myths, it thrived because it served a purpose. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People believe in the Rothschild conspiracy not because they're evil, but because it makes sense of chaos. The global economy is complicated. Blaming one family simplifies it. Wealth inequality is offensive. The Rothschild myth personalizes it. Elites feel untouchable. The Rothschild name makes that literal. It's a narrative shortcut. Instead of learning how hedge funds, central banks, and corporate lobbying work, it's easier to say it's all controlled by the Rothschilds. But this belief comes at a cost. It leads people away from the truth, toward fantasies that distract, divide, and sometimes destroy. So what are the Rothschilds today? They own a few private banks in Europe. Rothschild and Company, Edmond de Rothschild. They manage wealth for elite clients, including royalty and industrialists. They own Chateau Lafite Rothschild, one of the world's most prestigious wineries. Their net worth? Probably between $1 to $2 billion per branch. Far from the $500 trillion claimed in memes. Are they powerful? Yes. Are they the world's puppet masters? Do they represent the elite class that shapes global finance? Absolutely. But they are not alone, and they are not immortal. The real story is much less sexy, but far more important. Despite facts, these myths keep circulating. Let's break down the top conspiracy theories involving the Rothschilds and what they get wrong. The The Rothschilds control all central banks. This is one of the most viral claims online. TikToks and Instagram Reels regularly show evidence that every central bank is under Rothschild control. The Rothschilds have historic ties to central banking. Yes, they advise governments. Yes, they were early lenders to monarchies. But they don't control the Federal Reserve, the ECB, or most modern central banks. These are state institutions with bureaucratic structures, flawed but not family-run empires. This myth often stems from misunderstanding what central banks do in fear of invisible systems. They control the media. This myth suggests the Rothschilds own CNN, the New York Times, or entire Hollywood studios. There is zero verifiable ownership of any major media conglomerate by the Rothschild family. The confusion comes from their historical support for publishing houses in 19th century Europe. But modern media is controlled by giant public corporations like Disney, Comcast, and Viacom. Again, powerful equals control is the flawed logic at play. They planned COVID-19. This theory exploded during the pandemic. One viral meme claimed the Rothschilds patented the virus. Another claimed they stood to gain from lockdowns via investments in pharmaceutical firms. None of these claims hold up. No patents, no holdings in Pfizer or Moderna. No public statements. It's projection of fear onto a historical name that already triggers suspicion. They are reptilian aliens. Yes, people believe this. Popularized by David Icke, this myth claims the Rothschilds are part of an ancient bloodline of shape-shifting lizards ruling the world in human form. No commentary required. We're officially in Marvel Cinematic Universe territory. They built Israel to control the world. This theory mixes Zionist history with antisemitic fantasy. It claims the Rothschilds funded the founding of Israel purely to dominate global politics. It is true the family supported Zionist movements, especially Baron Edmund de Rothschild in the late 19th century. He funded early settlements and land purchases in Ottoman Palestine. But the modern state of Israel is a complex national entity, not a private Rothschild creation. They are worth $500 trillion. The internet loves this number. It appears in memes, videos, TikTok slideshows. No single entity on Earth controls that much wealth. Global GDP is around $100 trillion. The entire wealth of all billionaires combined is about $15 trillion. The Rothschilds likely manage a few billion across family branches. It's fantasy math, used to exaggerate power. So why do these myths persist? Because they serve a psychological function. When the world feels chaotic, pandemics, inflation, war, it's easier to believe that someone is in control, even if they're evil. A hidden hand is less terrifying than random disorder. The Rothschilds are wealthy, Jewish, private, transnational, historic. They check every box for conspiracy projection. But here's the danger. While people obsess over fantasy villains, real systems continue to exploit them. Here's what people miss while chasing Rothschild ghosts. BlackRock and Vanguard manage over $15 trillion in assets. The BIS, Bank for International Settlements, quietly coordinates central banks. Lobbying groups, not families, steer legislation in most democracies. Corporate boards, not dynasties, dictate shareholder priorities. Private equity firms reshape entire industries with no public oversight. The real elite isn't hiding. They just wear suits and don't use family crests. And unlike the Rothschild myth, they're not 200 years old. They're born every election cycle. So where are they now? The Rothschild family has split into multiple branches. Some notable parts include Rothschild and Company, a financial advisory group headquartered in Paris and London. Edmund de Rothschild Group, a Swiss private bank and asset manager. Chateau Lafite Rothschild, one of the most prestigious wineries on earth. Art patronage, the family funds museums, galleries, and academic projects. Their strategy today is the opposite of attention: low profile, long-term legacy, private wealth. They're no longer kingmakers. They're elite advisors, quiet, reserved, not looking to rule the world, but happy to lend to it. Open TikTok and type Rothschild. What you'll find is a rabbit hole of paranoia. Videos with scary background music, flashing red arrows, and dramatic captions like, They own you, you just don't know it. Slideshows showing every world event, wars, pandemics, inflation spikes, as part of their master plan. Overlays of Forbes covers, historical photos, and out-of-context documents. These videos rake in millions of views. Why? Because TikTok's algorithm rewards emotion, not truth, suspicion, rage, confusion, shock. These generate engagement. Engagement feeds reach, and reach creates evidence. The more views something has, the more people assume it's real. The Rothschild myth doesn't survive in the digital age. It thrives. We need to stop viewing conspiracy believers as merely ignorant or crazy. They're often overwhelmed, misinformed, economically insecure, looking for agency in a system that erases their voice. The Rothschild myth survives because it gives them a villain they can understand. Blaming the system is vague. Blaming the Rothschilds is simple. It turns anxiety into action, even if that action is just a share, a like, or a comment. The myth becomes medicine. The lie becomes therapy. The truth is, the Rothschilds are rich. They shaped history. They influence finance. But the fantasy is, they control everything. They pull every string. They are immortal demons with trillion-dollar plans. And between the truth and the fantasy, most people prefer the fantasy because it makes them feel like they've discovered a secret, because it lets them feel like outsiders who know better. In a world full of systems too complex to fully grasp, blaming a surname feels like clarity. If you've made it this far, here's the punchline. The Rothschilds aren't the problem. Distraction is. While people binge conspiracy content, corporate monopolies expand, surveillance becomes normalized, wealth gaps widen, politicians get bought, institutions rot from within. It's not a hidden family behind the curtain. It's open systems we refuse to study. The Rothschild name is now a mirror. Some see power, some see evil, some see conspiracy, some see legacy. But maybe what it really reflects is our own discomfort with the world we've built. A world where power is real, wealth is concentrated, systems are rigged, and nobody really knows who's in charge. So we invent someone. If this story made you think differently about power, control, and the myths we believe, subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden forces shaping our world. Check the description for links to exclusive content, sources, and behind-the-scenes material. And don't forget to share this video, because the only way to fight misinformation is with better information.